right, so I just want to tell you a little bit about me. Some of the stuff we see on social media says I'm a Pflugerville City assessor. I used to be a Williamson County tax assessor. Also want to say I'm from California also. I'm not from California either, but I know y'all said the prices are going up. You may think that's where it's from, but we'll go over some of the slides here and I'll show you. All I'm trying to do is follow what's going on in the market and what I see that's out there. I know you've all seen this one out there also, right? Maybe not be as funny right now, but here's how everybody sees it right now. I've seen this out there quite a bit on social media, talking about how this would be what Shade, a tax assessor, looks like, but he actually. So just to give you all a little bit about what the appraisal district does, we are tasked with valuing over 169,000 parcels right now. And each year, we also collect taxes for it. The tax assessor, Shay, has contracted us along with all the other entities, which are the ISDs, the cities and such. They also are there to contract us to collect their taxes. We have 6 ISDs, 12 cities, and 10 other entities that we collect and value properties for at this time. And our main office is in Belton, satellite offices in Temple and Killeen. And currently we have 48 employees and we have 14 appraisers to value all 169,000 parcels each year. So after speaking with Commissioner Whitson last week, I know he said some of the things that we wanted to tell you about. We wanted to make sure we could educate you guys on the process, the public, about the tax process, about the parts that the appraisal district plays in it, what requirements and laws that we are bound by, maybe some of the items that caused the increase in appraisals, and of course, what you can do if you disagree about your appraisal, how you can come see us, and we can possibly come to some resolutions on those values. So the appraisal district, what some confusions are, I think that we are part of the county. We are not part of the county. We are a separate political subdivision. Each year, we are required to appraise properties at 100% of market value. The Texas tax code is pretty clear, as it says at the bottom, you can see, all taxable property is supposed to be appraised at market values on January 1st. Okay. So the way that this district is organized is we have the citizens of Bell County, you guys. You elect the school district board members, you elect the county commissioners, you elect the aldermen for the city council members and such. Each of these entities then elect a board of directors that governs the appraisal district. The board of directors, depending on how big each entity is within the county, they get a certain amount of votes and they determine who our board of directors are. The board of directors controls part of the appraisal district. The main thing that they do is obviously appoint and hire the chief appraiser. And so my main task as the chief appraiser of the appraisal district is to be the primary administrator of the appraisal district. We are required to appraise all the property at the total taxable value, the market value on January 1st. We also determine all the eligibility for exemptions and for special valuations like agricultural. And then of course we certify the appraisal roll to be able to then turn it over to the tax units to determine what their tax rates are going to be. So to simplify some of the tax process though, so to make it easier to understand, the appraisal districts, we determine a taxable value each year within each entity. And that's what the notices that we sent out. We sent these out based on the information that we have, and then the next little while of time is for you to tell us if we're wrong or tell us if there's issues that you have with the properties. Once we get done going through all the protests and the appeals and talking to everybody, we turn that value over to the taxing entities. The taxing entities then determine their tax rates, which are based off of, they determine their budget, which they haven't even started setting yet. They divide that by the taxable value to determine the tax rate that they are going to set. The tax rate hearings, I think, typically take place in the fall, and that is actually your opportunity to go talk to them also. We sent you a personal invitation out to everybody to come out and talk to us. They don't necessarily send that invitation out, but at the tax rate hearings, it's your opportunity to come talk to them and tell them if you agree or don't agree with the tax rates, and have an opportunity to have a say in the other part of the decision as to the tax rates itself. And then of course on the other side of it, after they determine their tax rates and how much taxes each property is going to incur, then the appraisal district, since we contract for the assessor, we actually collect the taxes after that. So to show you our calendar that we use throughout the year. So typically our calendar, our year starts in the summer, right after we've done certifying our roll, handing it over to the tax entities. That is when our appraisers go out to the field. They have a few months from August till almost January to be able to get all of their field work done, which most of the time right now with the way the county's growing, they're spending most of their time measuring new houses and checking areas where they may have had issues the prior year. They come back in the field usually in January, and they have about a month, 2 months, because of the way the calendar works, to analyze all the sales that have happened in the county and determine valuations before we send out notices on April 1st. And of course, at that point in time is when we go through appeals and inquiries until we certify the roll in late July and turn it over to the NAs. And then after that's when they set their tax rates, during the tax rate hearings in September, October timeframe. So I got a few questions here I know that I've seen on social media, and also some of the other questions I know that is just typical just because of some of the misunderstandings or some of the lingo that we use on our tax notices and also the tax lingo that we're required to use. So I want to get some of the general questions out of the way. And of course, when we're all done today, we'll have time for plenty of questions and answers, and even Shay can answer some of the questions too if he wants. Right. So I've made no improvements to my property. Why does it say that my structure improvement value has changed? So on our notice, as you can see, this is a piece of where the notice that everybody just received. It says structure and improvement value. Go ahead to the next slide. So improvement is a term, is an appraisal term, and it's not saying that you haven't improved your house. We're not saying that you changed it. More than likely, we haven't even been to your house. There's 169,000 properties. But improvement is the meaning an improvement to the land. It's basically the structure of the house on the property. Just because your value has changed and where it says improvement does not mean that we're saying that you've made an improvement to your property specifically. More than likely, most of that change is based off what we believe is what the market has changed that value. So what happens if the CAD doesn't appraise the properties at 100% of market value? So each year, or every other year, the Texas State Comptroller, they go in and do what they call a property value study on us. And they look at all the sales that we had. They also get other information that we didn't have, because Texas is a non-disclosure state. We don't receive all the sales. We receive quite a few of them, but not all of them. So they receive even more. They take all those sales and what we had and then what they get, and then they determine if they think we did a good job on the appraisals. If they didn't, if they think we did not, and then the next year they will study those specific school districts again to see if we passed it again. They require us to be within between 95 and 105% of what the property sold for each year of all the properties that they study. Okay, so if during that, after the second year, if they have it, so if we failed this year on one of the school districts, the next consecutive year we would test just that school district. If we failed it again, the next year again, they would actually possibly lose funding on the third year. So this year we will be doing all the county, all school districts, but can you go to the next slide? For the last 2 years, we've actually been below where we need to be in Salado. So as you can see, in 2017, we were at 92.65%, about 7 or 8% below where the state said we should be. And it's not mean to say that I agree with exactly how the state does their valuations, just as you probably don't agree with how I do all of our valuations. But even so, it is showing us something that we were behind in the market in 2017. When they raised the values in 18 in Salado, we still were behind the values again, 93% in 2018. So when I was talking with Dr. Novotny, I believe it's at least a couple $100,000 is how much they could possibly lose in the budgets next year if they were to fail the Salado study again. On the third year is when the school actually loses some of the state funding that they receive if the appraisal district has not appraised their property at 100% of market value. So how do we determine the appraised value? So the first step in appraising a residential property is to value the land. And put it generally, we use vacant land sales when they're there. So if there's a lot next door to you that's sold, that'd be the perfect comparable sale. As y'all know, that doesn't happen in a perfect world or most worlds either, but that is what we use if we can. If not, we use allocations. Basically, look to see how much of a improved property sold for, and a certain percentage of it, we apply that to the land, and we look at all the other sales to determine where they're at as part of the allocations. Once we determine what we believe the land value is, at that point in time, we will value the improvement. To value the improvement, we review all the sales within that neighborhood, that group of properties, and we're looking at all what we think are similar properties. And we will take each one of those and see how far above or below are we at currently compared to what they sold for. So once we do that, we determine what kind of modifier or multipliers, you could call it, do we have to apply to all those accounts to move them up or down to get them all to get to almost 100% of what they sold for. So in a similar type of neighborhoods, we'll move that up and down until we get 100% of what they sold for, looking at all the different ratios, and go to 100% median of what they sold for. And that's basically how we get to the improvement part. The sales prices that happen and the appraised values that we're putting out there, they're for total market value. When you buy a property, a house, you have to buy the land underneath it. You can't buy just one or the other. So even though we did raise values in quite a bit of land values in Salado, the total value is what's important because we're looking at the total value. If we were to put $1 on the land or $200,000 on the land, your total value is still going to be the same. It's based off what we believe the total value of the actual house and land all is together. So why did my land increase so much? So when my appraisers brought to me this year in the short time I had before we sent out notices, we did realize that we were behind quite a bit on land values, on market values that we had seen, some sales that we'd seen. And the reason we get that way sometimes is partly because we could have sales that weren't present when we actually valued. Like I said before, Texas is a non-disclosure state, so we may not receive all the sales. This year we received some of those sales and we saw what was happening. It was hard to ignore once you find out what the sales are and to see what the land values are. So for land values, there was quite a bit acreage, some of the lot values in Mill Creek, Hidden Springs, quite a few of them did go up. And if any of you were to look at what some of those empty lots were selling for, and people buying and building on it, you'd see that most of that is founded. And we do have sales to support most of the actual lot values that are happening out there. So my appraisal increased over last year. Why would that be? So market activity, that is the main reason that the appraisals are going to increase, right? So we are there, the appraisal district, all we're trying to do, we're not trying to determine what the market is. We're there merely as a reflection of the market, trying to determine what it's doing. We're trying to mirror it over on our values to try to make it look exactly like what the market is doing. We want to mirror it on our values also. So market activity is the main indicator for why most of the values increased this year. And it may have been that some of them were behind the years before. They may not have been at market value, causing a larger increase this year. But once we see what the market values are, it's hard to ignore where we should be putting the values. Go ahead. So a great site that y'all can look at if you're ever just curious about real estate and values and what's going on. And some of you realtors out there may know plenty about. The Texas A&M Real Estate Center does a lot of research on the real estate in Texas. They look at every different, what they call service areas, which ours is the Killeen Temple area, and it covers the whole MSA of Killeen, which is basically Bill County. And as you can see here, from 1990, since when they've been studying it, the average sales prices have increased steadily, and so have the number of sales. And you can see even in 2016 or so, it looks like we certainly took off in Bill County based on sales prices as what it was selling. And even though you may not have seen as big of an increase the last 2 years, that may be partly where we're at now, based on catching up for those couple of years where we may not be able to mirror the market because of the information that we had or didn't have at that time. So you can see quite a few sales have happened, or sales prices also have gone up to, I believe it's about $169,000, I think is what the average sales price was this last year, according to the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. So also one thing that they look at is the months of inventory. And those real estate agents out there, again, are probably familiar with this, but basically a way to explain the months of inventory, if you were to have a running faucet and you turned it off, this is how much longer that faucet's going to run until it runs dry. So this is how many months of available houses will be out there if you were to stop selling houses and had any available on the market. Typically, this is basically a way of showing what kind of demand is out there in the market. So as you can see, in 2018, we're the lowest it's ever been in Bill County. And what that shows is there's not much out there for sale. And as long as the inventory keeps going down, obviously what happens is supply goes down, the demand goes up, and therefore the prices are going to increase. So until we start building more houses in Salado, or people quit moving here, this is probably going to be a factor for the future to come, unless something changes with, like I said, unless the market takes a downturn and people quit moving here. But as you can see, Bell County and Salado alone, there's very little inventory that's out there right now. And again, like I said, what we're doing, we're just reporting what the market's doing. All we're trying to do is mirror and follow the market. We're not trying to set any rates or any values based off of getting taxes or anything to that effect. Honestly, my first year here, if I could have made this easy and left all values flat and had nobody come and complain to me, that would have been a perfect first year, or my first 4 months. But you know, it's hard to ignore, and the law and the code requires me to go what I believe market value is based off the sales and what the information my appraisers bring to me. As you can see here, this shows us a little bit of what the activity has been going on this last year. We had have 107,000 approved residential properties in Bell County. 3,700 of those had a deed or transaction on them. Or actually, I'm sorry, 11,500 did. In Salado ISD, we have 3,700 properties, and 400, that's just over 11% of the properties changed hands this last year. So that's a lot of properties moving out there in Salado and Bell County. So one thing I did when I've been seeing a lot of people out there saying, I can never sell my house for that, and some of you may be right. Those are people you need to come talk to us afterwards and during protests. But for some of you, you need to look at what's going on in the market, see what people are out there listening for. And sometimes if you haven't looked at it while you're not planning on selling, sometimes you don't go out there and see what's going on in the market. I pulled this yesterday just to see what out there is listings in the market and to see where we were at, how our appraisals that we just noticed, this wasn't last year's appraisals, these are the notice values that we just sent out. And as you can see in Bell County, on all the 1,044 properties that were listed yesterday, our values are only 75% of them on average. There were some over and some lower, but 75% is where we're at on average of what the listings are at. And Salado is at 84% as to what they're listing the property compared to what we have it valued at. So we're still behind based off the listings that are out there. Maybe those are just the high dollar ones that are out there. Maybe they're asking too much. Maybe they won't get what they're getting for. But just to show where we're at compared to the market. Actually, I expect this number to be closer. I was hoping it would be, but it was quite a bit difference when I pulled it. So what does a homestead exemption do? I heard a lot of y'all say, I thought that meant my value would not go up more than 10%. So what the homestead cap does, one of the main things that the homestead does, it's a homestead cap, and it limits what you're going to be assessed on, what you're going to pay taxes on. It's not going to change what your total market value is going to be on the property. Your total market value is still going to be what the market value we believe it should be, or what you and the appraisers agree to once if you protest at that point. But the homestead, the cap, what you pay taxes on, is going to be 10% more than last year. So when you look at your notice, it says the total market value of homestead portion increases more than 10% from prior year than appraised, then you're only going to pay 10%. The only difference would that be sometimes if you add a new improvement, add a workshop, a building, a pool, it's going to be 10% plus the value of what you actually, what the value of what you added to the property was. But it will be present each year. So if, for instance, you have a $100,000 house, we appraised that at $150,000 this year, you have a homestead on it, you're only going to pay taxes on 110% this year. If next year it goes up again, you're only going to pay on 10% more, which is, what, $12,000. So $122,000 is what you're going to pay taxes on. It will just keep going up until it hits that, but there's always a possibility that the market comes down again too. So if the market comes down less than 10%, obviously we're not going to go up to the 10%. And also, so the requirements are, for those of you who may or may not have homesteads, you have to reside in the property, and it has to be your primary residence as of January 1st. And that is the year you're applying for. The deadline to apply typically is April 30th. But if you do apply late, the law does allow us to go up to 2 years back if you apply later and be able to get refunds. But preferably, as soon as you move in, that first January 1st, you need to get your applications in. Even before you hit that January 1st, you can apply for the future year. And I don't know if y'all noticed the signs, kind of makeshift signs we made, but we do actually have a couple of my staff that were graciously agreed to come out here today to talk to anybody about exemptions specifically, or to take any exemptions. If you haven't filed it or don't know if you have, stop by and see them on the way out. They're prepared to take all exemptions that anybody has or questions about them also. So, and also the other thing that the homestead exemption does is it gives you, for the ISD, it gives you a $25,000 exemption. So again, on that $110,000 worth of taxes you're going to pay on, you actually subtract $25,000 off that value, and that's what you'll actually pay taxes on for the school district. It gives a $25,000 exemption. For the village of Salado Homestead, it's $5,000 or 20%, whichever is greater. So whenever you figure out what that 10% cap value was, you take that amount off for that specific entity that gives that homestead exemption also. So if I think my property is overvalued, what recourse do I have? So we have quite a few different ways for you guys to come in and talk to us and discuss with the appraiser, even if you just wanted to see how we got to your value. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to protest it, but you just want to see how we got there or see the sales that are happening. Unfortunately, because of the Texas laws, I can't just give you all the sales and information that's out there because it's a non-disclosure state and there are things that don't allow us to give out the sales. We can't do that. But if you come and talk to us or protest your property, we can give you the sales information. That's what basically what triggers it to allow us to give you that information. Preferably, as many as possible, we would like to come in on our walk-in period. We have what we call a walk-in or an inquiry, where all of our appraisers are set up in a room, be able to talk to people every day. We started this last week, and they'll be there until May 15th, which is the protest deadline, to discuss with property owners any of your issues, to go over the comparables and show you the sales and make any adjustments that are warranted. They are, every day we've been seeing about 80, 90 people each day. They come in, we get them in 20, 25 minutes, show you where you're at, and plenty of people walk away with agreements of changes and adjustments to values, or at least satisfied us to show them how we got to those values. Of course, if you don't come in during a walk-in period, there are other ways that you can resolve your property. You can protest online. Once you do that, you can tell us what is wrong with your property. We, on most residential properties, within a few days, we're going to send you a comparison grid, show you the properties that we actually use to value your property. And if there's a offer made off those comparables, then you will get that offer made, and you can actually accept an offer online at that point. Of course, if you don't want to file a line or come in a walk-in period, or if you can't resolve it during any of those times, you can protest by mail, fax, or email, and go before the appraisal review board at that point. And we'll go over that in a moment also. So walk-in, I think I talked about most of that, but basically they are available every day. And this is only at the Belton office. We want to keep all of our appraisers together so we can actually manage it. So the Belton office is the only place we are offering this until April 15th from 8 to 4:30. And they're there on a first come, first served basis. It gets a little busy at lunch. The first thing in the morning, we usually have our morning rush, but feel free to come by if you have some time and see how we got to your value. So when you're sitting with an appraiser, one of the things they will show you is a comp grid. Earlier I told you how we rate all the properties and move them up or down with a multiplier. That's how we do basically our mass appraisal, how we do our initial appraisal. When you come to talk to us, we're going to look at and show you, see how your property sits within specific comparables. We're going to do almost like a fee appraisal, very similar to that, just not as detailed. And we're going to see how you fit within that. Quite often when you come in, we're going to pull 4 or 5 sales that may be more comparable than the 20 sales in your neighborhood that you used to value it. And quite often it may actually show that there's an adjustment needed to your property based off those specific sales. We'll pull those forward, 3 to 5 sales that are there. We'll put up all the characteristics for each of those properties. And then what we do, just like any fee appraiser will do, we'll make adjustments for differences. If they have a pool, we're going to adjust off the pool, and vice versa, garage, more square footage, higher quality, different size land. We'll make those adjustments, and then down at the bottom, it'll have a value, a median value of those comparisons, and that's what the appraisers can offer you at that point. Or you can discuss with the appraisers different comparables that are there and such. But this is similar to comp grid that you would receive talking to an appraiser, and also during our online protest, this is what you would also receive by mail or email. So if you come to the walk-in inquiry or during the protest, what should you bring with you? So items that are helpful, settlement statements. If you just bought your house in the last year, since January 2018, bring in your settlement statements. And that's the contract price that you got when you close on your house. Just bring all your closing paperwork if you don't know which one it is, and it tells us how much you paid for the house. Obviously, if you paid more than the house that we have on it, you probably want to stay home. But if you paid less than that, bring in your settlement statement. Other things you can bring that can help us is your fee appraisals. If you got a fee appraisal recently for a refinance, or because you think our value's too high and you want to go talk to a fee appraiser and see what they got, or if it's because you closed on a new house and you got a fee appraisal. It helps us determine, especially if you paid much lower than we have on it, it helps gives us another source to say how or why you paid less. It's another indicators to show us that. Also, when it comes to fee appraisals, it can help us if we think there's any kind of square footage issues. Fee appraisal will go and measure your house, so he may have different measurements than we do. We can compare to see where our differences are and if there's any issues we need to correct when it comes to square footages. Other information you can bring is sales data. Once again, I said Texas is a non-disclosure state, so we don't receive all the sales. So if you think you're a couple of neighbors down the road, they all sold for a lot less than what you have on yours, and you think they should be used as comparables, then go to a realtor, get that information, and bring it into us, or talk to the people that did, and bring that information to us. The more information we have, the more we can help you. Other things you can bring, if you have any damage or condition issues, problems with your houses, you want to bring current photos and of course estimates if possible. You want to bring any estimates to repair the slab, repair a roof, show us how much it's going to cost to get it back to a regular lived-in value. So if you protest online, you can, on your actual notice, there's an owner ID and an e-file pin. And once you go there, like I said, you're going to receive your comparable grid, and you can actually settle online through email, back and forth through email within a few days. We've settled quite a few already online. So, and of course, if you don't settle online, you can always, then at that point, we'll schedule you for a hearing. You'll come in for an actual hearing. One other thing that we did offer new on the online also this year is actually you can schedule your hearing too. We do actually have scheduling available. So the only bad thing is that we have a very limited time or windows where we have the appraisal review board available to have hearings. So they start May 21st. Right now we currently are on the first week open for hearings, and it's only going to be probably a few weeks. So it is a very limited time, and it's only when they're able to meet and when our budget is able to pay for them to be there at that point in time. So, but you can't go online and schedule your time of hearing. And as far as my deputy told me last time, we still have quite a few openings on those hearings, but the sooner you get in there, the better if you want to schedule online. I'd encourage you to come and talk to us first to see if we can resolve the property without even having to do the formal protest. So if you protest by mail or fax or email, your protests are going to be scheduled during that time. We're going to send you a letter. We have to send it at least 14 days before your hearing. And we're going to send it out to you, tell you the time and date you are to show up for that hearing. Once you show up, we're going to sit down with you with an appraiser and see if we can resolve the matter beforehand. Even if you already talked to an appraiser, we're probably going to go review the case again and go through it again and see if we can resolve it. If we still can't resolve it, then we'll go before the appraisal review board. And they will, at that point, be able to make a decision on the property. So the appraisal review board that I keep talking about, they are a separate set of citizens that are there to hear disputes, mostly between the property owners and the tax appraisal district, or to when we can't come to agreements, or if you have a property with a lot of issues but have no estimates, so we can't put a number value on it, the appraisal review board is there to be able to make those decisions. What would happen after you get done with your hearing, you would sit down with in front of the appraisal review board, you'll tell your side of why you think the value should be. Our representative will say, here's what we believe the value is, show our comparisons. The appraisal review board, right before the hearing is over, they will make a decision on value at that point in time. And of course, that will be mailed to you and certified later. Of course, if you still don't agree with the appraisal review board's decision, the next options, of course, are binding arbitration, lawsuits, and some to that effect. But the appraisal review board is there to hear the property owner protest is one of their main tasks that they do. They also approve our records once we're done certifying the rolls. So if I protest and the total market value doesn't go below the homestead cap value, will this change my taxes? So we get this question a lot, and I don't want to discourage anybody from coming to talk to us. But the taxes are based off the homestead assessed value, or the homestead cap value if you've capped out, which I know a lot of you have at this point. So if you say that $150,000 house again, if you're going to be paying taxes on $110,000 and you think it's still worth $130, we're just way too high at $150. If you come in and you're successful at getting us to lower to $130,000, it's still not going to change your taxes. Your taxes will still be based off $110,000. Like I said, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from coming in, but you have to realize that even if you get a change to that amount, it's still not going to change your taxes till you go below that homestead cap value. Only at that point in time will it actually change the amount of taxes that you can possibly pay on that property.